Okay, welcome back to part 3. Probably have 10 to 15 parts of this one. This is a great story. It's a great story of education and what we're dealing with in today's society right now. I'm ready for a huge change, and I'm going to outline some things that I've seen and some things that probably can be done to really repair our education system. And I have some great insights as to why we fail as basically teachers, students, and in America, in our education system. But let's move further along with the COVID saga. In 2020, we were basically all on Zoom. I told the kids, I saw the writing on the wall. I said in March, we're going home. We're going on Zoom, so be prepared. We went on Zoom, and as I outlined in part 2, they were apathetic. They didn't learn. I had to cut back on assignments. We had some very weird systems to where we were on a shortened quarter system. The quarter system was actually a semester, and so that we had to alternate between different groups of students. And as I had stated earlier in part 2, I had pleaded to go back to school more than once, and I was denied. So moving on to 2021, okay, we started the year again on Zoom, and I knew and I had a feeling, okay, that we were going to be on Zoom basically close to spring. So that's kind of how it went. And the students came back, okay, and many of them were unprepared, and they confirmed exactly what I thought. They're asleep, they turn it on, and they're asleep, or they turn it on, like they go into class, and they're playing games. Pretty much either one. Or they're eating. Some of them had to take care of their brothers and sisters because parents were out working at the time, which was completely understandable. So they had younger children that they had to help and make sure they were on their Zoom meetings and make sure that they weren't, being disruptive. So it was a real problem. I also know for a fact that many of my students were abused. They told me this. It was during the time. Now, as a mandated reporter, I report everything I hear because students like me that pick me out as one of their favorites to tell. Because they know that if they do tell me, something will be done. I will report it and make sure that I will follow up to make sure something did happen. So I do have students that did tell me all these things. So our suspicions about what was going on, and I kept saying, this is really happening at home. They have nobody to report. They can't come see me. They're not going to report to me over Zoom. So my students' lack of being in the classroom and inability to do so probably damaged quite a few students in some very severe ways. Just for the fact that they didn't have access to school, time away from their house, and at least a trusted adult that they could report things to. So things did get pretty bad as far as I was concerned, and I teach high school. So there's some really damaging things that went on. All right, well, we ended the year in 2020. It ended, that was when we ended with being on Zoom, and then 2021-22 school season is when we went back, right after spring break, after it got hotter, and it obviously was predicted, and very politically motivated in a lot of different ways. Needless to say, as a Christian and Republican in a school system, my views are hardly ever met. What's good for children is what's good for children. That's bottom line. If it's not good for children, it shouldn't be in the school. We'll be talking more about that later. I have some very interesting stories, real life stories. And looking you straight in the eye and saying, I swear, being a Christian on Jesus, my mother who's with Jesus right now, that I'm going to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. People don't understand that if you do believe, then you also have another responsibility to live up to some of these beliefs that we do as best we can. We're all sinners, and God loves everybody. So does Jesus. So in the classroom, I never really look at my students as transgender students. They're just Francisco, whatever they want to be called. Call the kid G Unit. I didn't care. I like G Unit. He got an F from me. He was a very nice, he had a good soul. He just was a horrible student. That doesn't mean they're bad people necessarily. So again, going back to 2021 and ending the school year, it was a mess. The kids were totally unprepared to come back. And they only came back for a very short time. It was after spring break, which is approximately like 1 month away from when school ends, maybe 5 weeks. And there wasn't really much I could do with them. And remember, they did have to stay, excuse me, they had to stay 6 feet away from each other. So at the time, I couldn't do labs, they couldn't touch each other. You had to have contact tracing. There was lots of things that we implemented to make sure that students were okay in the classroom. Testing. Part 4. Part 5. All right, I'm losing track.